And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. And it's been another week, Heather.
Here we are.
I mean, we're coming up to 100 days.
On Wednesday.
Of Trump. And it feels like 100 years.
Feels like so many. Okay, should we dive in?
Yes. One of our purposes here is not only to bring you up to date and give you themes, but also reassure you. But the reassurance is getting harder and harder as time goes on.
But part of the reassurance is we're all together.
We are all together.
So that part's not hard.
We're all together, and we're together with you. So what are we going to talk about, Heather?
Let's cover Pope Francis.
Yes.
Trump's first 100 days, as you just said, and the economy going down the tubes.
Yeah.
But so are Trump's approval ratings.
Well, that's good news. We're going to get to the good news. But Pope Francis, I mean, he will go down in history, undoubtedly, as, people call him the people's pope. But what strikes me, particularly in the context of what we discuss all the time, is his character and temperament and his position on issues and values are in such sharp contrast with, guess who? Donald Trump. I mean, if you put all of people, all of the human beings on the earth in a line and said who stands for decency, Pope Francis would be on one end, and who stands for indecency? Somebody else that we discuss would be on the other side.
I know. And in a way, I don't always think of popes as being tuned in to politics and economics as such, though of course they are. But his sense of economic justice came through in a way that I think we're all looking at now and realizing.
Exactly. I mean, he came out against inequality of wealth and inequality of income and pointed out ways in which it corrupts societies. He was one of the first to speak out against what was going on in Gaza. He has come to the aid of migrants and immigrants and basically said, he's decried the way in which some politicians, i.e. Trump, have characterized and demeaned and demonized immigrants. I think that the Pope was the most important voice on so many of these moral issues. He was the conscience of the world. Now, he didn't go as far as many people wanted him to go.
Right.
He did not say, abortion should be a right of every woman, that priests should have the opportunity to marry. But he was consistent in terms of his moral view.
Right. And he was astute, and he had such a sense of the globe. And it wasn't just, we have to remember the poor. It was more nuanced than that. You really got a sense from him that he cared about the difference between, inequality, as you said.
And that anybody could be poor, that the poor were not a separate group. He very often in his encyclicals and in his statements, he talked about not othering.
Right.
That the minute that a society or people start talking about the other,
right,
that they are not not understanding that we're all in this together, and that was a terribly important.
Have you ever been to the Vatican?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. In the 90s. When did you go?
In the 90s.
Was that?
No.
Way back there?
I remember
That's
Black
wild.
Blonde.
Yeah.
In the Sistine Chapel.
I was the one waving, and you probably didn't have a great view of.
It's incredible. I mean, the coincidences.
Did you see Conclave?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
And also, did you see The Two Popes?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's another movie. It's really good. Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, right. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Oh, you have to see it.
Okay, I'll see that. But so sad. And so, of course, not a young man, didn't have the best of health, but also, still a shock right after the J.D. Vance visit.
He was 76 when he became Pope. Mm-hmm. And people thought, too old. But he proved that even an old guy can be an activist.
Yeah.
And he was an activist.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, that's sad. So we have to move on. I apologize for being the timekeeper here.
No, we don't have to move on in the sense that I think we all want to not only pay our respects, but remember him in terms of what he represented.
Of course.
And keep that those values, those principles, that character, that temperament at the top of our minds in a time of total darkness, given the United States, but given much of the rest of the world.
I know. Okay, well, it's good we're having this coffee to kind of lift ourselves up, I guess. Okay, so first 100 days coming up this Wednesday is the anniversary. If we have to characterize it, I mean, is it cruel? Is it incompetent?
I would say it's both incompetent.
You can't pick one word?
The Trump regime is the most, I have been in 4 different White Houses, 3 different administrations, and I have never come across an administration, a regime that is this incompetent. I mean, it's not just Pete Hegseth. Yes, there is Pete Hegseth and his, the Pentagon is coming apart. It really is coming apart.
Yeah.
And you can't have the Pentagon coming apart. But you have the State Department also. You have the Justice Department. I mean, all of these major departments of the United States are in mayhem. Yeah. I mean, complete mayhem. It's chaos.
And that's because the leaders aren't qualified to lead. And then now with the Hegseth example, you have his chief of staff and others leaving. I mean, you've run a department before. What does it look like when all your top people run for the hills?
Well, it means that you are really a terrible manager. I mean, what you need to do, and the labor department that I ran was small. I mean, compared to the Justice Department or compared to the Pentagon.
But how big was it?
Well, it was about 16,000 when I came in.
Okay.
I mean, but it was,
rinky-dink.
But what you want to do is you want to maintain a sense of collective identity and solidity and stability, and you want to give people an understanding of what they are there to do, and you want to link your mission with the mission of the United States. Now, it's hard to do that, I think, in the Trump administration, Trump regime. But Hegseth and others are Marco Rubio.
Right.
I mean, look at what he's doing. Look at Homeland Security.
Right.
I mean, what a wreck these places are.
Right.
Now, you asked whether it's incompetence or cruelty, and I think
you can pick another adjective.
Well, I think it's both. I think that there's a lot of cruelty, particularly in the people around Trump. I think Trump is totally incompetent. I mean, we know he has the attention span of a fruit fly. He can't maintain anything, can't even read.
Drosophila.
Yeah. What?
Drosophila.
What is
That's
Drosophila?
a fruit fly. Drosophila.
I didn't know that.
Okay, keep going.
The attention span of Drosophila?
Drosophila.
Drosophila?
Yeah.
But
sorry,
I can't even remember what I was talking about. But there is cruelty around Trump. I mean, people like Stephen Miller, who is in charge of immigration, is really, I think, I hate to say this about anybody, and I don't know him, but from everything I see and hear, he sounds like a horrible person.
And they're getting a high off of the cruelty.
They are.
And the power they have,
yes.
And their ability to influence him and get it through.
And Elon Musk, also the same thing. And the fellow who is the trade czar. Both, I mean, all of these people are just... they're not people you would ever want to encounter. Certainly you couldn't make friends with, but their values.
And then as a group, I mean, that's part of it too, is there's the group dynamic.
They egg each other on. And I think the difference, Heather, between the first Trump administration regime and this one is that the first one, at least you had people who were not only establishing guardrails around Trump's craziness, but they were establishing a certain sustainability and a certain stability. And now it's just every sycophant, and they're all sycophants, they're all lackeys, all of them are competing for Trump's attention. And again, because Trump has no attention span, he's changing his mind every minute. I mean, on every issue, whether it's trade or immigration or anything else. If it's controversial, a week later or 3 days later, it's something else.
Yep. And they salute and they like to follow through on the insane orders. And before it was, no, we have to have some bounds around this.
Oh, no.
Now it's let's go.
Let's
see what he does next. And then we can make more money. And then
I think the only values that is Trump thinks about, we now know, if we didn't know before, are power and money. That's it. But the people around him, I think, do have a kind of fanaticism that I have not seen before in government. A kind of a brutality, a bullying aspect. I mean, immigration is just the tip of this iceberg. But wherever you look, you see the FBI. Look at Kash Patel. I mean, of all the people you don't want to be put in the position of FBI director, and that is one of them. And they are now proving it.
Right. Now, why would you say that? Because he has an enemies list? Because
Well, he has an enemies list, and he boasted just yesterday about the fact that the FBI had arrested a judge in
Milwaukee,
in
wasn't it?
Milwaukee. That's right. And I'll remember her name in just a minute. Dugan was her last name. Hannah Dugan.
Mm-hmm.
But how can the FBI arrest a judge just because she's there trying to make sure that immigrants have access, even if they have no papers, even if they are undocumented, they have access to a courthouse. That's what judges ideally are supposed to do. You arrest a judge? How can the FBI, how can the administration, the executive branch arrest a judge, an Article 3 judge? Well, we're getting into very dangerous territory here.
Yes, I saw your Substack this week that warned us about where is the dangerous territory, where does a democracy end and a dictatorship begin, really, truly?
Well, we're getting very close to a dictatorship, and I hate to say this,
I hate
Heather.
for you to say it.
Well, I hate for you to tell me that you hate for me to say it, but it's...
Could you post this on Substack and then I can comment
well,
on the hating?
It hurts me personally so much. I mean, I spent, years in the Federal Trade Commission, in the Justice Department, at the Labor Department, and I was surrounded by people who cared about this country. But now you have somebody surrounded by others who are bent on really overwhelming democracy, on turning our democracy into a dictatorship. And I think that if we're talking about the first 100 days, this has to be one of the bigger central themes. And let me, if you will, excuse me for going off on my rant.
No, I love it. Let me get
no,
my
you
coffee.
don't. It's
No,
not.
Let me get my coffee.
Yes,
Keep
no.
going.
Every democracy depends on what might be called a level of mid-range intermediary institutions. I'm talking about the media, universities, courts, political parties.
Nonprofits.
Nonprofits. I mean, all of these intermediary institutions that exist independently. And their independence from the head of state or the president is critically important in terms of maintaining honesty in the democracy. Science would be another good example. But what you see this administration, this regime doing over and over and over again is attacking all of these intermediary institutions. They're going after universities systematically. They're going after law firms. They're going after even libraries and museums. They're going after the courts. One of the reasons that the judges getting together just this past week, and one of the Judicial Conference of the United States is usually a yawn. I mean, nobody pays attention to what the judges do, what they get together. But this week they got together and they asked whether they are going to be able to maintain the U.S. Marshal protection because so many of them are getting death threats. Why are they getting death threats? Because Trump and some of the people around Trump are demeaning and excoriating the judges. Well, this is again what you see Viktor Orban do, what we saw Stalin and Hitler and other so-called strongmen of the previous century do. They go after these institutions.
But they're not just, so yes, they're going after them and that's horrible. But around that is the threat to go after them, the fear. I mean, just in the nonprofit space this week, there was an executive order around Act Blue, for example, which is a payment processor, and everyone's terrified that that's going to come down. So he is so good at stoking the fear and then often doing something that he threatened he would do. Not all of it. Maybe he zigs instead of zags, but that fear underlying everyone can be so paralytic.
He trucks in fear, exactly.
We cannot allow that part.
And the fear leads to intimidation, and intimidation leads to silencing.
And then we're doing his bidding for him.
Exactly. Well, you can't, I mean, I've said this before, a tyrant or tyranny generally cannot be maintained without people submitting to it.
Yep.
But how do you avoid submitting to it if you are, for example, a judge getting phone calls or getting written notes threatening your life, and you're not sure the U.S. Marshal Service will actually be there to protect you? Your family might be vulnerable.
Right.
I mean, how do you protect yourself if you are working in a lab on some very important experiments, and suddenly it may be that your entire funding is gone because you have said something or you've done something.
And then you're driving home and you can't listen to public radio anymore because that's on the chopping block and about to have a big vote where the bulk of the funding would be gone for the two biggest public broadcasters. That's this week.
Or the media generally. Look at CBS, 60 Minutes. Yep. The head of 60
Bill
Minutes,
Owens,
Bill Owens, he resigns from 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
Why? Because he doesn't think he can maintain his credibility or the credibility of 60 Minutes because of the pressure being put on 60 Minutes and on CBS from a lawsuit. Where does the lawsuit come from? It is a defamation suit that came from Donald Trump.
Yep.
$66 billion suit.
And it's all tied up in money and politics.
It's all money.
Who's owning what
money,
behemoth,
money and power.
For profit.
And that's
behind the news.
But the problem is, if you have the head of state who has huge money and huge power and doesn't have any sense of responsibility to the institutional framework of a democracy, all he cares about is power and money, then you are not only inviting corruption, you are inviting fear and intimidation and silencing. And when these intermediary institutions, all of them, begin to disappear or begin to become silenced, then your democracy is silenced. Then if somebody can be picked up and basically without a trial, without any kind of a hearing, an accusation that the person is dangerous and sent to El Salvador, none of us is safe.
Right.
It's a slippery slope.
And this word we keep saying, deportations. A deportation means sending someone to safety in the country.
Well, it used to.
Not sending someone into prison in a country.
Well, this is abduction. This is an abduction, and this is a new kind of
or kidnapping.
A new kind of vehicle for fear. I mean, if you are a student in the United States, an international student on a visa, or you are on a work visa, or even if you have a green card, you are likely not to speak up about something that you feel otherwise ought to be said that is critical of the administration or in some way crosses what the administration line is or the regime's line is, because you are fearful that you could be, there could be some retribution.
Right. And we have him going after the universities, the students and the people themselves, the judges. It's all encompassing.
That's the issue. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about each of these separately, but the unifying theme is going after the intermediary institutions with fear and intimidation. And is he winning? Well, it's hard to know because you don't know how many people have been silenced. One of the things that I really do, I'm angry about. I mean, I'm angry about a lot of things, Heather. But one of the things that really angers me, pisses me off, is you've got a lot of the CEOs of this country, the big companies that depend on the stability of this country, that really do depend upon government in so many ways, depend on Americans and American consumers. They are backing Trump.
Right.
They want, selfishly, they want a big tax cut. They want regulations, health and safety and environmental regulations tossed away. They're
for
not
the sake
standing
of profits,
up.
right?
And that for their own greed. It is just their own greed. Well, as has been said many times, it's not just the bad people and their actions. It's the silence of good people that allows a tyrant to take over.
Well, so you mentioned his incompetence. So on the one hand, it is disgusting watching it when so many people are in harm's way because of it. And then it's also embarrassing that this incompetent person is representing us to the globe, to be an American. It's mortifying. So I'm having all these feelings about it. But then I have this feeling of, but at least he's incompetent. And I feel like some people are starting to notice it. So is it a little bit of one of your dull, tarnished silver linings?
Well, it may
Can
be
we
a silver
see
lining.
it that way?
In other words, if he were really competent, all of this would be much worse.
Right?
I think that's right. Because what he does is he moves in one direction, and then when he sees that it was a mistake, or he's getting
doesn't see when someone tells him it was a mistake,
or if
and
he sees
reverse,
or if he sees the stock market. I mean,
right.
The tariffs are a good example. He comes on strong, and tariffs are great. Tariffs are wonderful. Tariffs, a beautiful word. And then he puts the tariffs up on, and he calls them reciprocal tariffs, as if they are somehow justified, deserved, and reciprocal, and so and then what happens? The stock market tanks. But the bond market, we've talked about this before, the bond market, which really is supposed to be treasury bonds, the safest place to put your money, the world begins to pull its money, including a lot of Americans, out of T-bills. Yeah. And he gets a little nervous. He gets scared. He says, well, we'll put a 90-day hiatus on all of this.
Time out.
But he still has 145% tariffs on China. And then he starts realizing that China has a lot of ways of making life impossible for America.
He starts realizing because his phone starts ringing. CEOs start calling him
exactly.
up. Look at my age. I'm dialing like this.
Yes, you are.
Not like this.
Yes, well, I would dial like this.
Right. And so they say, we just got to tell you that the tariffs on China are really, actually, we're going to have to raise the prices. We just got to flag it for you.
That's right. And when he sees the prices are actually going to go up, and his whole reason for being, the reason that so many people voted for him is he said, I'm going to take prices down. On day one. And then he gets nervous and he says, well, maybe even the China tariffs were too high. They're unrealistic. They're not really sustainable, he says. And the stock market then goes up. Oh, by the way, when you have gyrations in the stock market and bond market like this, you know that somebody's making a lot of money.
Oh, for sure.
Somebody was.
And you know who it is?
Inside,
not us.
Not us, but somebody who has inside
I know.
information. Somebody, maybe, who knows? Trump family? Could it be?
And then crypto's on the rise.
And
it's
Trump
so much
cronies,
financial shenanigans.
There
happening.
is. I mean, I think we can talk about the first 100 days. We will, but I think looking back on this, historians will find more just payoffs and
we should be able to be seeing this now, right? And I feel like there was a time when investigative journalists were able to find more things and felt free to speak out about it, or when someone who felt a moral feeling, were compelled to say, you know what, I have to say this isn't okay. We need to adjust how often Congress is admitting to where their funds are going.
Well, this is where the silence issue comes in. It could be. We have a lot of reason to believe that there is a lot of funny business going on, a lot of payoffs, a lot of inside information, but we're not getting any reportage because a lot of people are scared.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to be whistleblowers in this environment. Reportage? Is that a word?
Yeah. It's French-ish.
Well.
So the good. So I.
Bonjour.
Hi. I refuse. I feel like Michael and our team would say,
we can't do this in French.
We're also not allowed to sing.
Okay.
It's been outlawed.
Good.
I think we're great. So in terms of the positive, which is, I'm having to put on, my loop to really look and see a tiny little glimmer of positive.
Your rose-colored
My rose-colored jeweler's loop.
Yeah.
But so some people, I couldn't believe this. And I never say positive things about Goldman Sachs, but even they spoke out this week about the importance of diversity and said, hello, you can't just write things off.
Yes, I think there are people in the business community, in the financial community, beginning to say, no, this is wrong. I mean, it's not just wrong in economic sense. Even the Wall Street Journal has been against a lot of what Trump has done. No, it's wrong in the sense of what a society should be, of what we want from America, of what this country ought to represent. And the fact that Goldman Sachs did say, well, diversity is an important value, is critically important. The fact that Harvard University stood up to Trump and said, no, independence of a university is a very critical value. You have these little green shoots, and hopefully there will be more.
Right. And then you have certain, it's good to see certain people on the messaging side of things who are really being so clear, right? So you have AOC and Bernie who are against the oligarchy, which is so interesting because we had Democrat saying, Democrats shouldn't be using the word oligarchy. They should focus on wokeness.
He thinks people don't know what an oligarchy is.
Right. And so the assumption there is that people, first of all, people do know what an oligarchy is, right? They are sensing it. They are watching it. This came out this week in the Wall Street Journal that the 19 richest households in the United States earned in wealth additional $1 trillion last year. 19 households earned $1 trillion on top of what they had.
They had to divide up the trillion. I mean, when you divide up a trillion between 19, I mean, it's not much.
But I mean, these numbers, and Americans know this. They are watching. They say, we like the part of taking down the elites in some way. We are feeling shortchanged. And so, but to say, I mean, so back to the messaging, I'm liking what AOC is saying. I mean, we had Van Hollen go down and watching him speak.
And Cory Booker and obviously Bernie Sanders.
And Pete Buttigieg has been poking through with very clear
Pete
language.
Has been poking.
Yes.
But the question really is, what is the message, not just the Democratic Party, but what is the message after 100 days or as we approach 100 days that criticize the key criticism of this administration that brings together? I mean, people, conservative pundits like David Brooks say we need some sort of national civic uprising. Now, for that to happen,
I know
you've got to have a society that is not just Democrats who are enraged, but a lot of independents and even some former Trumpers who say he's gone way overboard. This is not what I expected or wanted.
But I think Americans on average are agreeing on these things. They're seeing on average, right? I mean, of course, the base is going nowhere. But I think this idea that, they're pro-immigration, we're anti-immigration. It's not that. People want secure borders and lawful immigration on average, if you ask them.
But also, his poll numbers are plummeting.
I know.
They're going down.
Even around immigration. But around protecting the border, it's high. But people are saying, we actually want the rule of law, and we actually don't want oligarchy on steroids.
See, this is a very, very important point. Because if people are suspicious of how the game is being played and that the game is rigged and that inequality is out of control, you want a term like oligarchy that people can, that people want to learn. They want to see that, yes, we used to, at the turn of the last century, have a first Gilded Age, and we had an oligarchy, a small group of people that were controlling everything financially and politically. We are now in a second Gilded Age, and we have a new oligarchy, and it is a small group of billionaires who are controlling everything economically and politically.
And it's the big picture. This is orchestrated. This has happened before. This is not novel because all of a sudden we have all these fabulous, brilliant people coming in and getting richer and richer and richer. This was predictable. This is a repeat. And that's the whole message, to really have it sink in.
And the way you overcome oligarchy is for people to come together and to politically reassert their majority.
Right.
I think if we waited until 2026, maybe Democrats, hopefully, please God, Democrats are going to be gaining control of maybe one or two chambers of Congress. But can we wait till 2026? Do we need to have this kind of sense of mass resistance
right
before then?
And I so appreciate your Substack that you wrote, having spoken to Sam Brown, and talking about, is it a general strike? He used the term and has used and is well known for using the term moratorium, which he likes better than a general strike in terms of its ability to bring many people in. Right?
Have you met Sam?
No, I would love to.
He's an interesting guy. He, in 1969, was the brains behind the anti-Vietnam moratorium. Now, at that time, I remember a lot of people were saying general strike.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, no, if we want to make this big enough to be seen and heard and have an influence on American politics, we've got to use words and concepts and do this in a way that more and more people feel it's theirs. It can't feel partisan. It can't feel like a strike. And I remember at the time kind of debating with friends about that. I wasn't sure. I did participate. Bill Clinton participated in those demonstrations in 1969.
It was brought up in the future.
Yes, it was in October of 69. And then again, there was even a larger march on Washington in December of 69. But all of that, Heather, contributed to ending the war and getting Nixon out of office.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that worked.
It worked to that extent. Yes, it became a huge movement. And what we need now is a pro-democracy movement. We need a movement that recognizes that the rule of law and also economic consistency, they're very close together.
Can you talk about Jerome Powell and what happened this week?
Well, if for example, what happened last week was that Trump made it sound as if he was going to try to get rid of Jerome Powell, the head of the Fed. And markets reacted, as we last week said we thought they would, because if you don't have the independence, this goes back to the theme of independence of these institutions. The Fed has to be independent or it has no credibility. And so Trump had to go back and say, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to threaten his job. It's another example of Trump being inconsistent, incoherent, a kind of chaos in terms of the Trump administration, because he is creating circumstances that are making life very hard for many, many people out there.
But it's not the many people he listened to. It's whoever dialed him up and said, okay, too far.
Yeah,
the markets are not happy. You need to say you're not going to fire the guy you called a loser in all caps yesterday.
And in this case, it was the evidence suggests that it was the heads of major corporations that said, if you don't do this, we're going to face huge inflation. We're going to have to raise prices. It's the combination of your tariff policy and your criticism of Jerome Powell. It's going to drive the economy nuts. And he listened. He listened.
Yeah.
Is that good? Is that good news? When I look at this first 100 days, I just say to myself, the good news, the really good news, is that, or maybe the potential good news.
Here we go. Soften it.
No, I'm going to say a potential silver lining is that Trump may be ironically bringing people together. Bringing together the nation against his dictatorial impulses, against his inconsistency, against his chaos, against his tariffs, against his immigration policies. It's all so antithetical to fundamental values shared by so many Americans, not just Democrats. So maybe if we are lucky, the silver lining on the 100 days or the 150 days or how many days it takes is that Americans are brought back to first principles,
right,
and we agree on the basics.
So you've mentioned the intermediary organizations, and I am watching gatherings, right? Universities starting to come together, lawyers signing Friends of the Court memoranda, all of these examples, but also at the individual level. It's so important that people are making calls, showing up at protests, getting online and staying engaged and active. And
Absolutely.
That informal leadership that people are leaning into is critical.
It's absolutely critical. Even if the intermediary organizations were strong, you still need grassroots activism. And it's something we talk a lot, and we talk a lot with you about, because you, by nature of being with us, with Heather and me, you are grassroots activists. But this grassroots activism has to be enlarged, and more people have to be pulled into it.
Right.
It really is a matter of the future of the country.
I liked seeing that Harvard research study that you have cited a couple times, which talks about this 3.5% threshold.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So it basically says that if you have 3.5% of a society, of a population, really intentionally mobilizing against a government, that there can be a topple.
This is a study coming out of Harvard. And I think the researcher was Chenoweth. Am I correct? But the researcher looked at historically at movements that did actually change politics, and found that 3.5% of the population seemed to be the critical determinant. If you could get to 3.5%, which in our population is what, 11 million, something like that?
Yeah, slightly more, I think.
Yeah, you don't need to have a vast majority, but you need to have activists who are making loud noises about 3.5%, and you get change.
Yeah. That is a silver lining.
I am old enough to remember civil rights and the anti-Vietnam War movement and Sam Brown and a lot of things that to me showed the likelihood, the imminence of change.
Yeah.
You are probably too young.
Well, I've studied them. So, and protests are protests. They're happening.
Yes.
But to study have been at some of these big ones.
Yeah.
Seems, I'm jealous, but also there's the other part of me that thinks it must be hard to have been there and then to be back in a way.
It is. It is.
I
think a lot of people, a lot of kind of ancient relics like me, we look back and we say, well, it was possible in civil rights and anti-Vietnam, and we accomplished a great deal. And the women's movement was also a major movement. Why is it so hard to take on Trump? Well, I think the answer is it won't be that hard. It's only 100 days. Let's keep on reminding ourselves, not even 100 days.
Is that making me feel better or worse?
Well, it should make you feel better in this context.
Okay, got it. Right.
Because we haven't really given all of the forces that could come together enough time. The blitzkrieg of Trump, and one of the features of Trump in his second term is that it has been a blitzkrieg. It was planned as a blitzkrieg. The first Trump administration, he had a lot of people around him who were essentially guardrails, preventing him from just doing even crazier things. This second Trump administration, he's surrounded by enablers who, as you said before, are cheering him on. And part of the cheering him on is the blitzkrieg. Get stuff done as fast as possible.
If you stretch out the graph of time, as I always say, you see trend lines, right? So one other thing that I try to remind myself of is that looking back in 10 years from now, right? My child will be looking back from 10 years and saying, what did you all do? By the way, I was only 12 at the time. There will be a low, but will there be a high? And how high can we get the graph to go back up? Is it above where we were before on many issues?
I hope so. I hope, again, part of the silver lining is that we get to a point that is better than where we were before Trump, even before Trump won, that we have enough commitment to democracy and the rule of law that we get big money out of politics, that we reduce the power of big corporations, that we actually have institutions in Washington and in state capitals that are working hard for average working people and for the poor, which takes us back to Pope Francis. Pope Francis could do only so much. He could be the conscience of the world, but he had no political power. And at every turn, he was confronted with the reality of politics. And that was the limit of Pope Francis. And I think the greatest tribute to Pope Francis and the greatest tribute to others like him, the prophets of the world who had no political power, like Martin Luther King Jr., is to make in politics the values that they represented.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know where I'm going next?
No.
I'm going to my local independent bookstore
Are
because
you?
today is Independent Bookstore Day.
Let's have it. Let's cheer Independent Bookstore Day.
Independent bookstores and also reading and books. So here's what I'm buying. I am buying Tim Snyder, of course, the Yale historian's book on tyranny, because we are going to be interviewing him and having coffee with him next week.
Next week here.
Yeah, next week here.
Join us. Tim Snyder, the Yale historian, will be with us. And well, that's great.
Yep. So I'm going to read On Tyranny, and then I'm going to pre-order your book from a bookstore because I'm not getting it from other places, and I'll leave it at that. So your book, your memoir, coming up short, hilarious, a memoir of my America. So I'm so excited to read it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy it, and then I'm going to take little notes in it, and I want to bring it onto a coffee Klatch, and I want to spill coffee on it, and I want to discuss it, and I want to make it part of our history.
I couldn't
You're
endorse you more. Listen, thank you.
And you.
And thank you for everything that you do for Inequality Media, Civic Action.
You're the inspirer.
And for your just intelligence and...
Stop it.
Okay, I won't embarrass you further. But let me also thank you. Behind the camera today is Michael Lahanas Calderon, and Michael is just, you've met him before, and we'll
Michael.
have him. He'll be back on our coffee Klatch. But I want to thank you for bearing with us, for joining us again, for being out there every week, for telling your friends and acquaintances and even people who you are not friends about us, and the importance of joining not only our coffee Klatch, but also joining the movement. So thank you. We'll see you next Saturday.
That was so fabulous, and I had a great time, and I really thought it was wonderful.
I thought it was very, very
You
fabulous.
were great.
And you were beyond great.
You're good. Have you done this before?
I've never done it before, but you hit a new high. Really.